Now, I was trying to figure how I follow up on this because it is a complex subject. And one person wrote from the internet and said, you know, he didn't understand what I was talking about, which I could figure that could probably be. And looking through everything, I didn't want to get this mired down in dissecting words constantly. But that's one word, and you know, that I think we should look at. And in looking more, I'll show you something before we leave today, because I have always felt and I've always suggested and shared with whoever would think it, or whoever would consider it, that even Jesus was a mythological figure, not a real figure. And I was amazed to find one of the four Gospels. I never saw this before, and I'll show it to you today. I never saw it before, but one of the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John's, who suggests the same thing, which I find, you know, quite astounding. Because of all the years I've looked at the Bible, I never saw that, and I've never heard it suggested by anybody, and yet there it is in the Bible that there is some doubt as to the existence of Jesus, written by one of the Gospel writers. So that's, you know, that's a significant thing. And I'll show it to you before you leave today. But trying, once again, to do the best I can to explain where I'm coming from. The point is that the Bible is written mythologically in the same way that the ancient classical myths are written. People, names, human situations are given, but they actually represent other things. For instance, in classical mythology, you could have Bill and Joe clashed, and it caused great pestilence upon the earth because of these two kings. So King Bill and King Joe clashed, and it caused great pestilence among the earth, around the earth. And you look at this, and you're reading it, and then somebody's trying to teach you in a Bible study, you know, when this happened, how many died, and all that. But actually, it has nothing to do with that, because King Bill might represent that which is the cold, and King Joe might represent that which is the warm, and it's talking about two elements of nature clashing and bringing a great pestilence upon the earth, which would be a tornado or a hurricane or something like that. That's the way it's written. Names are given to represent natural phenomena. But especially in the Western culture, we have never really been able to understand this. We've never really been able to grasp how this is done. And so then you get into the Bible, and you get into what we were discussing last week, and we'll just spend a little time as we'll just take a quick look at it. But we were discussing this Melchizedek. And here is somebody that the Bible is trying to tell you did not exist. It says he didn't have any mother, he didn't have any father. He didn't have any descendants, he didn't have any beginning, he didn't have any end. So the Bible is mythologically telling you this is a form of energy. It's a form of something that is eternal and part of the universe, part of the cosmos. Well, of course, you know, because the word tithing got involved, connected with this guy, he was made, a church or a religious figure, a high priest, and then everybody started, you know, digging in your pockets for 10% of your money. When this was 10% was given to this person, in return, he gave something good. But now we learn it's not a person, in the same way that we learn that God is not a person, in the same way that I know that Jesus was not a person. These are all parts of this great cosmos, and the entire book is explaining how you interact with this cosmos. So, you know, we spent some time last week looking at that, and what I'm proposing to you is that this Melchizedek is the dark matter that has been flowing through the winds of the earth as discovered by the scientist in the article that we showed you. Could it be that the Bible was talking about the dark matter, which is 90% of the universe, and saying that's Melchizedek. That's what Melchizedek represents. Okay? Well, you need a little more than me just saying, well, you know, that would sound like a good thing, because the universe is 90% dark matter, so you can only see 10%. Our brain's 90% dark matter, you only use 10%. But if you give the 10% that you use, then you open into the 90% and you get the blessings from Melchizedek. But what was really interesting is when we started looking at some of the things, and if we just real quick, before we get on with what we're going to do today, real quick, let me do 63, overhead 63. I'm jumping a little bit on you today, Joan, because you know. But if you look at overhead 63, here's from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and we're talking about 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, Melchizedek, 10%. And here is Gary Tower, who is an astrophysicist from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Tower has calculated and confirms that 90% of matter in the universe is missing, or unseen dark matter. That would mean that only 10% is visible. 90% is someplace else, invisible. And in the same way, in the human brain, you use 10% of your brain, 90% of it you don't use. So there's a similarity here. For one reason or another, there is a similarity. And what I'm trying to suggest to you is that Melchizedek represents the dark matter, which is the 90%, and that we represent that which is the visible of the 10%. Okay, so there's your confirmation from NASA that 90% is missing, and we have other things that share the same thing. So we showed you that. Well, then what was really, really interesting, we looked at overhead B75 real quick. Overhead B75, and we have a scripture from Hebrews 7:1, which talks about Melchizedek, king of Salem, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings. What the heck is that? Now remember, this guy didn't exist. No mother, no father, no descendants, no beginning, no end. It's something else. It's just like God is not human. This is something else. So what's the slaughter of the kings? Well, if you understand mythologically the Bible and you understand Bible symbolism, the kings of the earth are the thoughts of the mind. So in other words, after the thoughts of the mind are dealt with, after the thoughts of the mind are shut down, after the thoughts of the mind are slaughtered, you run into Melchizedek, because that's your meditative state. That's what this is about. It's mythology. And then we saw the part here that Abraham gave him a tenth. King of Salem, king of peace. And notice here, no father, no mother, no descent, no beginning, no end of life, but made like unto the Son, abideth a priest continually. So some kind of an energy that is part of nature. But he got 10%, and he's the king of peace. So you slaughter the kings of the earth by shutting down the thoughts of the mind. That's meditation. You then meet Melchizedek, and you're giving him 10% because you're shutting down the 10% of the left side. Okay? And we got to that point. Then what I started to do, and I thought, well, let's take a look at this. So what we did, we broke down this word. Let me take this out of here for a minute. We broke down this word because we're talking about dark matter. We're talking about the life force. We're talking about 10. We're talking about our planet and galaxy, etc. Well, we broke down the name. Melchizedek. And as we did, it became very interesting. Because either this is all what I'm saying, or this is a big coincidence. Well, what we looked at overhead 346, and the first thing that we saw here was that M-E-L appears in words that have to do with what? Dark, melanosis, dark, mellifier, dark, melatonin. Even though it's a skin lightener in amphibians, it means black tone. So the word mel meant dark. Or the letters Mel. I mean, all words are, don't you ever wonder why do they call things what they do? Your name, why is your name? Where did it come from? What does it mean? And it means something. So then, we looked at 347, we pushed MEL a little further, and we came up with MELG, and what did we find? Milk and galaxy. Galactic, all this kind of stuff. So we got the life force, marked dark, milk, and galaxy. And my God, we're talking about dark energy that involves the Milky Way galaxies where we live. Well, we kept moving right along here, and the next thing that we did is we came up with the word chi, which is the 22nd letter of the alphabet in Greek. That's how it shows up in there. Well, somebody took that word chi in China. You want to put that on. 348?
It's not chi, it's Z.
No, I don't want that one. Forget that one then. Oh, I'll get that for you another time. But anyhow, chi in Chinese means the life force. It flows through the meridians of the body. So now you have Mel, dark matter, Milky Way galaxy, the life force. The life force that flows through the dark matter to the Milky Way galaxy is Mel Chi. Okay? And so then we went on and we got 348, and as Jones says, we found the letter Z. And the letter Z, the 26th, but it's a symbol for the atom. It's the symbol for impedance. And gosh, what is impedance? Look at this. Ohmic resistance. Resist the devil and it will flee. So here we have the atom, we have the subatomic, which is dark matter, and we have Om, which is meditation, to resist the electrical energy flowing through the brain. So we have Mel, Ki, Z, and we've got dark matter, we got the Milky Way galaxy, we got the life force flowing through the subatomic in Om. And then we went through overhead 349, and we got to the word D-E-K. And we got decent, doctor, doctrine. What I found interesting, we got disciple, and we got discipline. So we got disciple here. And we got discipline, which of course is meditation. But we went one step further, and to 350, and we looked at here, D-E-K-M, and what do we come up with? Up here, the number 10 is your 10%. But more than that, much more than that, and much more exciting than that, we came up with a derivative of the DKM, which is 10 times 5. Look at that one, Pentecost. And what else? The Septuagint, which is the Old Testament when it was turned into Greek. So they covered themselves there. And then, look at here. Pentecost. Let's go to the next one, Joan. When we looked up the word Pentecost, which is 351, we came up with the word quintessence. Right there. And here we have a situation where just 2 months ago, the scientists found dark matter which came down from Orion, touched down on the Earth, and they called it quintessence. So now we're talking about tithing or giving 10% to Melchizedek, and the word breaks down identifying it as the life force of dark matter flowing to the Milky Way galaxy in the subatomic realm, touched by Om, which is meditation from which we discipline ourselves, give the 10%, and then cause Pentecost or quintessence to occur on the earth. Melchizedek. And I'll tell you something, you can do it with a lot of words. Now, is it all a big coincidence? Some guy wrote me from Kansas. And he says he is coming here to find, he wants to sit at my feet, he says. Please.
The floor's cold.
Yeah, the floor's cold. But he says he has to find out how I know all this stuff. But what do you want? Do you want to take the Bible and say, well, this is Melchizedek, and somebody gave him 10% of his goats or whatever? or do you want to really know? And you know what? Religious people don't want to know this. Because all of a sudden now you're opening stuff that goes beyond the Bible. But you run right into Pentecost. You run right into the Septuagint, which is the Greek Bible. You run right into quintessence, which is the word that the scientists gave to this. Yeah, and you know, it's really interesting. Because as I started going through this stuff, I looked and I saw that Melchizedek is the king of Salem, which in biblical meanings means peace, the king of peace. And I don't know how many of you know it, but the capital of the quote-unquote Holy Land is Jerusalem, is actually what it is. Initially it was called Salem, the place of peace. Well, now if we're finding out that Melchizedek is this unknown, invisible, otherworldly energy, then the words of the Bible would say Jerusalem, which is above, is the mother of us all. And we're talking about not a Jerusalem that's over the people. It's unbelievable that people will take trips to Jerusalem over in Israel to visit the Holy Land, and their chances are pretty good they're going to get machine gunned to death. There's nothing holy about it. In the Bible specifically says in the book of Galatians, Jerusalem, which now is in bondage, but Jerusalem, which is above, is the mother of us all. So Jerusalem is a symbol for a higher form of existence and consciousness, as is Melchizedek. These things don't exist in the realm that we have mistakenly employed them. But I was looking at the word Salem. And when I looked at the word Salem, interestingly, I come up with, and I don't want to get deep into this because I can take every word in the Bible and it's not going to work because we're not going to enjoy that. But it is the word salt. S-A-L is the word salt. And in Numbers chapter 18, verse 19, you think of, it speaks about a covenant of salt. Remember in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, what happened to Lot's wife? She turned into a pillar of what? Salt. In 2 Chronicles 13:5, it says, God gave Israel to David by a covenant of salt. So, that word there, salt, and if you look at EM, it becomes interesting because it then becomes right back to the electron, to the electromagnetic. Any class of that uses electrons rather than visible light. So we have salt and electron contained in the name Salem. And so we can experiment with that. We can look a little closer with it. Also was referred to in that scripture was called the king of Sodom, which is interesting. Because Sodom, when you look at it, is the earth, S-O-D, and then Om, which is the supreme and most sacred syllable, representing so forth and so on. And of course, the city that was destroyed. But you have the earth and you have Om. So all of these words find their way back into electronics. They find their way back into electromagnetism. They find their way back into carriers of electronics and salt and earth and Om and all of these things. So they don't stand out there pure. If we looked up Sodom and we didn't find Om, all right. If we looked up Salem and we didn't find electromagnetism, all right. But we do in both words. And in both cases, these words are used in connection with Melchizedek. Okay? Now, let me show you something. This is what struck me. And I told you a little earlier that I wanted to share this with you because it did strike me as very interesting. I think that gentleman wants you, John. Okay. This is what struck me as very interesting. I have proposed to you that Jesus of the Bible never existed. That doesn't mean that Jesus of the Bible doesn't exist. I'm talking about in the form, in the traditional form that we have followed, it did not exist. Melchizedek, now we know, did not exist as a human being. But Melchizedek exists. Because how come? Because we've taken his word, his name, we've broken it down, and we've looked at all of the parts of his name as to what these parts mean, and we found dark energy, dark matter, Milky Way galaxy, the life force, the atom, Ohm, the 10% Pentecost and quintessence. That's what Melchizedek means, but there's no person. Now, I have suggested to you, and I've gotten in some difficulties with many people, that Jesus also never existed as a human being. But, of course, Jesus exists as the supreme sun, light of the world, and that in Greek, his name has a numerical value of 888, which is the mythical sun. Which would then say this is much more than a person, much more than somebody hanging out with these funky guys and all of this stuff. Well, when I looked, I came across something very interesting because I found that the name of Jesus' grandfather, if you would, was Heli, which word means the sun. But this is what really threw me for a loop. I want to show you overhead 354. This is from Luke. Luke chapter 3, verse 23. This is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph. Wait a minute here. I thought this guy knew. I mean, I was raised, this is the gospel. This is, as was supposed. So I looked up the word supposed. Presumed to be true without conclusive evidence. The central meaning is put forth or accepted as being true on inconclusive grounds. Supposed. To believe, especially on uncertain or tentative grounds. Put it back down. This guy didn't know. He said, this is what I've heard. This is what some people think, but there's no way to prove it. That's exactly what they're saying about Jesus in the year 2000. This guy was saying 2,000 years ago when it just happened. Now, I never saw that before. Never saw that before. Never saw the fact that one of the premier so-called writers of the gospel, Luke, of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is not sure that Jesus was the son of Joseph. So what else isn't he sure of? No real evidence that he was. It's inconclusive as to whether, I mean, there's no way to prove if he was or he wasn't. Or it's uncertain. But this guy is Luke of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This isn't somebody who wrote a book last week. And then he turns around, which was the son of Heli. Now the word Heliopolis is the city of the sun. In Egypt, Heli is the sun and Jesus is the sun. How long have you gone to church? How long have you been involved with Christians? How long did anybody ever tell you that Luke raised a question as to the existence of Jesus? Because he's obviously recounting something that maybe or he doesn't know because he said he was supposed to be. I don't know, but this is this is what they swear on and take allegiance to, and he's saying, I'm not sure. That's quite a discovery, isn't it? Now, what I want to do then, and it's a very important discovery because it lifts Jesus out of this mundane nonsense of goats and sheep and a crib and this lady without any sex and all of this stuff and everything, and it brings it up into the fullness of what Jesus really is, the supreme light. Of what Melchizedek is, the 90% dark matter, which is the essence of the world. And remember that this dark matter was spotted in Orion just 2 months ago, and then, according to the document, it came to the earth and was found blowing in the wind. So then who has come to the earth? Melchizedek. And when you go into meditation and you give that 10%, you're tithing to Melchizedek in the exact way that the Bible talks about Abraham tithing to Melchizedek. Because Abraham didn't exist.
Lee, I have a question.
I have a question.
Okay. Now, taking Joseph's lineage,
Yes.
saying that he's the son of Heli. Now,
Yeah.
that wouldn't even have been in the area that they live, right? Because of the Greekness of it?
No, well, I mean, that's why, because you got an English guy and you got a Greek guy and you got a Greek guy, and that's why it just goes back to mythology. It's all twisted in here. But I think the important part here, what this guy is saying is Joseph was the son of Heli, which would make Heli Jesus' grandfather.
Yeah, but Heli, well, my point is Heli wouldn't have been a name in
No.
Jerusalem.
No, that's right, because it's a Greek name.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. It's like Joni was saying that she went to a show up in New York, and they had the wise men coming to the Jesus at the crib, and they gave one of the wise men the name of Melchior. Well, that's very interesting. It's not a biblical thing, but it's extremely interesting because look what's there. Mel, Chi, and OR. Well, Mel is the dark matter in the Milky Way galaxy. Chi is the life force, and OR is the first of Orion, and the word OR means gate. Okay? So what is it? Melchior, which comes to the child, opens the gate to the life force of the dark matter, which is 90% of the universe. See? That's how all these words are put together. These aren't real people. It's much more important than people running around doing as the world turned kinds of stuff. This is important stuff. This is real stuff. And always remember, you can just pick that scripture and say, wow, he wasn't even sure himself, and he wrote it 2,000 years ago. If he wasn't sure, how the heck are you supposed to be sure in the year 2000? And he was supposed to be there. He said, I don't know. That's what they say. So let us take a look then, just for a minute, at this here Melchizedek in B76. And I'll show you here. Here we go. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. Well, there you have the physical, to the physical body and to the consciousness or to the spirit, which when you give 10%, which we're talking about when you meditate, there should something happen to your physical body. What is the sense of all of this? I hear all this stuff about healings and all these things, and they don't happen. Why? Because they don't understand. We don't really understand how to do this, and it has nothing to do with religious stuff, has nothing to do with Bible stuff, other than the fact that this is a document written in code that when you decode it, brings you to the face-to-face with how you survive, how you interact with the things that are in your life, that are in your universe. Okay? And here, what we have is he blesses Abraham, okay? He gave him the tithes, and the tithes are that 10%, and he says, the king of Sodom said to Abraham, give me the persons, take the goods for yourself. In other words, you give me yourself, you give me the physical, and I give to you that which you need to live. I give you those things that you need to have for a life, for existence, for eternity. Okay? Look at overhead 75 for a minute. Overhead B75. It should be, that's B76, B75. Okay, forget it.
B77?
No, I don't want B77 right now, no. what I wanted to tell you is that if you look in the Bible and you go to Galatians chapter 4, verse 22, it tells you in specific words that the story of Abraham, and the Bible uses this word, is an allegory. That means a symbolic story, okay? Well, here again, you know, it's what I'm talking about is that Melchizedek, no father, no mother, no descent, no beginning, no end, is a part of the universal light. It's not a guy running around. It's mythology. And so here then, but yet we have this guy Abraham who's dealing with this. Well, if you look at Galatians 4:25 in the Bible, it tells you that the stories of Abraham are allegory. Allegory says, wait a minute. What it does is it uses words. As I said before, King Bill clashed with King Joe, and they caused a violence upon the earth. Well, there was no King Bill, and there was no King Joe. King Bill represents that which is the cold. King Joe represents that which is the hot, and the two clash, and they cause typhoons, they cause hurricanes, they cause all these swirling things, and devastation upon the earth. I was talking about natural energy, light energy, dark energy, the things of the cosmos, and how does this work? And all of this is laid down in mythological terms because at that time you couldn't talk to people. They were not evolved scientifically to the point that they could understand the forces of nature. Well, now you can. You've evolved. So we have a literary device then, see? Now, here we get to the point where you're talking about how the church has taken 10% of people's money. And here you get to the point where the Bible warns you about stuff like that. Look what it says in Overhead B77. Overhead B77, it tells you that Melchizedek, who we say is the dark matter, the life force of the Milky Way, had no descent of people. Them means us. He whose descent is not counted from them received tithes of Abraham and blessed him. But then look what it says here. Here men that die receive tithes. But there he receives them of whom it is witness he lives. In other words, you're not supposed to give 10% of your money to just people or institutions or organizations. It's a ripoff. And it's a ripoff because the Bible tells you don't do that. The Bible says you give it to that which has no beginning, has no end. You give it to Melchizedek, which means you give to the dark matter, you give to the life force, you give to the 90%, and you'll do that when you come into meditation and you turn off the 10%, which is the left side. And I would hope that as you consider this, you ponder our meditation here, which is conducted in dark energy. Dark energy, the Milky Way galaxy, is Mel. The life force is Chi. The subatomic Om is Z. And Pentecost, quintessence, disciplining is DEK, Melchizedek. We'll look at it for just, let's look at this in a contemporary way for just a minute. Let's look at, excuse me, let's look at Mel, dark energy, the Milky Way galaxy. And as we look at Mel, right here, focus on that, then let's go and look at Overhead 305, afloat in a cosmic hall of mirrors, okay? And it says here, as it was clear from the dark matter conference, okay? This one simple stuff, dark matter, is coming to seem as ethereal, that's spiritual, as anyone could have imagined. Most of the universe is made from some kind of unworldly, dark matter that can pass right through ordinary matter, barely leaving a trace. Empty space is pervaded by an equally mysterious dark energy. And then it was found in NGC 1999, and the scientists say with a sense of irony, they're calling this new force quintessence. Well, doggone it, when you look at and you break down the word Melchizedek, when you get down to DEK in the dictionary, which is the American Heritage Dictionary, it breaks down right to the word quintessence. It goes right there. I can't make this up. See, the thing is, Albert, what really gets me, you can prove it, and it doesn't make a doggone bit of difference, because my traditions are too important. I don't want, don't confuse me with proof. Yeah? So there is Melchizedek, dark matter, galactic, galaxy, all of this stuff. Next is Chi, which is the, you just saw overhead 305, and you saw the scientists from the New York Times telling you about dark matter that makes up 90%. Let's stop for a minute. What's this guy get? 10%, right? Well, if he only needs 10%, that means he's already got 90%, right? Because if he didn't, if he was just 75%, he'd need 25%, wouldn't he? He doesn't need 25%, he needs 10, which means he's got 90. Okay? According to Gary Toller of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, Goddard Space Labs, and according to the New York Times, 90% is dark matter. And this guy's first part of his name, Mel, means dark matter. That's pretty good evidence. So we go to Chi, life force. Interesting to me that the word China contains the word Chi. I don't know. But I would refer you to a book, you can hold for a minute, Joe, written by physicist Fritjof Capra. And the book is called The Tao of Physics, and you spell Tao T-A-O. In this book, Capra brings forth the astounding similarities between ancient texts from China and the East and the realm of modern physics, much in the same way that you're coming in here and we're doing with modern physics and the Bible. Parts of the book focus deeply on Chinese writings, and I'd call your attention to prominent letters in the word China, or Chinese, which is Chi. But anyhow, Capra says in the book, listen very carefully, I have found the Chinese terminology of yin and yang very useful to describe our cultural imbalance. Our culture has consistently favored yang or masculine values and has neglected their complementary yin or feminine counterpart. And that came from religion. And Christianity, played a big part of it. Put down yin. And when you put down yin, when you put down the female, you are throwing the entire structure out of balance. Now you've got yang, you've got no yin, and you're going to get sick. Not only you're going to have a culture that's sick, but you're going to have sickness in your body because the male and the female are not balanced. We have favored, he says, self-assertion over integration, analysis over synthesis, rational knowledge over intuitive wisdom, science over religion, competition over cooperation, expansion over conservation. So this one-sided development has now reached a highly alarming stage, a crisis of social, ecological, moral, and spiritual dimensions. What is he talking about? There is an imbalance of yin and yang. We have, and deliberately, and religion is the culprit, put down women, put down the feminine as unimportant. I hear people argue about this country was based on this. In the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. All men. And I heard people argue, oh no, they meant women, they just meant men. Oh no, they didn't, and I'll tell you why. Because until 75 years ago, women in this country were not allowed to vote. When this was written, it meant what it said. All men are created equal. Now, Capra says something in the introduction that I have to share with you. Introduction to this book, The Tao of Physics. He says, the connection between physics and mysticism, that's what we do here, is not only very interesting, but extremely important. It shows that the results of modern physics have opened up two very different paths for scientists to pursue. They may lead us to put in extreme terms, get this now, they may lead us to the Buddha or the bomb. Is that a great line? They may lead us to the Buddha or the bomb, and it is up to each scientist to decide which path to take. It seems to me, now get this, that at a time when half of our scientists and engineers work for the military, wasting an enormous potential of human ingenuity and creativity by developing ever more sophisticated means of total destruction, the path to Buddha, the pathway to the heart, cannot be overemphasized. Great stuff. Now, of course, and I'm back here. As we look at the word Melchizedek, we instantly bring East, Chi, and West, Mel, together. Dark matter being the Pentecost quintessence, which has arrived from Orion and is on the earth now. You know, I don't think you, I don't know how many people get this. Melchizedek has arrived on the earth, according to this. And as you slaughter the kings of the earth, which means you take down these terrible thoughts and meditation, he gives you this healing. Now, I put something up on the overhead, in overhead 352 from Capra's book, The Tao of Physics, and I wanted to read it. Let's read it together. Traditional Chinese medicine is based on the balance of yin and yang in the human body, and any illness is seen as a disruption of this balance. The body is divided into yin and yang parts. Globally speaking, the inside of the body is yang, the body's surface is yin, the back is yang, the front is yin. Inside of the body there are yin and yang organs. The balance between all of these parts is maintained by a continuous flow of qi. Each organ has a meridian associated with it in such a way that yang meridians belong to yin organs and vice versa. Whenever the flow between the yin and the yang is blocked, the body falls ill, and the illness is cured by sticking needles into the acupuncture points to stimulate and restore the flow of qi. See? But now it takes on even a greater meaning because, you know, this word, which is the life force, is found in Melchizedek. And I want you to know something. Oh, yes, it's Chinese, but that is also the 22nd letter of the Greek alphabet. So it's not just a Chinese word that I stuck in there. It's a Greek word. So if we look at the dark matter coming down from above as qi to enter into us and stimulate to restore the flow of the vital life energy, then we see Melchizedek. And we know, because the scientists have told us, that this force was spotted in a parallel universe in Orion, but has now been found by astronomers in Rome as flowing in the winds of the earth as Pentecost. What time is it?
10 after 12.
What time did I start? Okay. Give me 5 more minutes. Now, Capra goes on to say that the Chinese went on to study various combinations of yin and yang, which they developed into a system of cosmic archetypes, and it's associated, for those of you that like to get books, in the I Ching, or a book of changes, which is called the Book of Changes. And that's what we're that's what we're looking at in this age of Uranus, the age of Aquarius. It's a time of changes. Here we have, you know, generally after every election, that I've ever, in all my life, to say, well, the votes are in, the votes have been counted, and so-and-so's been, but that's not it this time, is it? We had a Supreme Court in Florida that was Democrats leaning and wanted to give the election to Gore. And then we had a Supreme Court in Washington that was Republican leaning and wanted to give the election to Bush. Well, the ones in Washington were more powerful than the ones in Florida, so guess who won? Okay? But there was, now, if I was to ask you to just think about what's going to happen, you, somewhere deep inside of you, would be a little bit shaky. Not because of Bush, he's just a man. Not because of Gore, he's just a man. But because of what's about to happen. Something has arrived. There's a change. Tremendous change. Uranus and all that kind of business with the electromagnetism. You know that not just this nation, but the world is on the verge of this cataclysmic change. And just think about it, you know, I know George is naming his cabinet, and, you know, he's a good guy and all this stuff. I know it's completely out of his control. But if you just think of it, nature will speak to you right now and tell you, trouble. Trouble. You'll feel it. Trouble. According to Capra, in physics, there is a concept known as the field theory of matter. Now, we've never gotten too deeply involved, and I guess that's why I was selected to do this, because I can't get too deeply involved in science because I don't know anything about it. But he states that in the field theory, a material particle, sit back in your chair for just a second, a material particle such as an electron is merely a small domain of the electrical field, which assumes enormously high values. The electron then becomes a huge field of energy concentrated in a very small place. In Chinese philosophy, then, the field is expressed explicitly in the concept of qi. The word literally means gas or ether, and was used to denote the breath or energy animating the cosmos. The breath or energy animating the cosmos. 90% of it. You recall I have spoken to you about the electrical energy entering the fetus, at which time the fetus begins to animate on its own. Here we see Capra explaining the Eastern description as the force of qi. I'm going to let you go right after. I just want you to say. Capra goes on. In the human bodies, the pathways of qi are the basis of traditional Chinese medicine. The aim of acupuncture is to stimulate the flow of qi through these fields. And according to Capra, the notion of qi bears a striking resemblance to the concept of the quantum fields in modern physics. Quote, like the quantum field, qi is conceived as a tenuous and non-perceptible form of matter which is present throughout space and can condense into solid material objects. Melchizedek.
Say that again.
Like the quantum field, qi is conceived as a tenuous and non-perceptible form of matter. In other words, a doctor can operate and never find any qi in anybody. It's non-perceptible. It's like Melchizedek. It's not there, but it's extremely important. So he says, a non-perceptible form of matter. Now we take that qi in the word Melchizedek and look at it, because the next sentence is, a form of matter which is present throughout space and can condense into solid material objects. Us. Okay? It's really, we've gotten to that proof point, and we're getting very close to the face-to-face point, and you know, I'm just here to tell you, I don't know, other than right now, if we open the door and somebody's standing there, I don't know how else to get the proof any more clear than it is, but we will continue to do that. And there is a lot more, and it's a very, very interesting time. And I tell you, and please don't take this as any kind of gloom and doom on Mr. Bush, because I wish him nothing but the best. I mean, but you just sit by yourself and just think about that for a minute. And nature will rise up inside of you and tell you trouble. And you'll sense it and you'll feel it. And this is exactly where we're going. Mainly simply because of the natural need for change, and the universe has run on a great wave of prosperity for a long, long time. And, you know, then the bottom starts to fall out, and nobody can do anything to change it at all. It just, you run into a point where everything starts to collapse, and unfortunately, whether it be Bush or Gore, whoever's sitting there at that time, you know, gets the blame for it. And of course, you have to look at the Melchizedek, the Jesus, and all of this kind of thing, which though we're just attributing dark matter and energy, there's a consciousness up there. Well, in spite of all of these stock market tremendous things and all of these wonderful things of cars and houses and all that, too many on the earth have been totally missed. And they still live in poverty. They still, you see pictures, I don't have to tell you about on television, little children playing practically in sewers and all of these things, animals abused, children abused, and so forth and so on. And so there is a need for a tremendous correction, and if it means taking away all of the good stuff so that people start to look at one another and say, hey, you know, you had it and you didn't share it. And that goes back also to religion and to governments which have simply decided that, you know, pray for America. I heard them. I hear them saying that all the time. Pray, God bless America. What about the kids in Africa living with flies crawling on their face? What about the people in South America with cesspools overflowing and stuff like that? So you have to change, and the universe has given enough time to say, if you won't do it, we will. And it's obvious we won't. So that's that. And we'll keep looking and watching, and we'll see what occurs, and I think you'll be able to come back and say, yes, we talked about it here. And I would just encourage you to the fact that Melchizedek has arrived and has brought along with him another old friend of ours named Samael. And we'll talk about it. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Okay.